Welcome. Thanks for tuning in.
Zanna!
Miranda.
Today we talk about the 10 tips to enhance employee experience as design principle.
Yes. Nice title, isn't it?
I like it. So let's start, as we always start, with why this podcast.
Yeah, so I was thinking about employee experience, customer experience. You see that a lot of people now, let's say EX is getting a bit more traction, and then a lot of people are saying there's no CX without EX and vice versa. And I agree, but it's also a bit of a hollow phrase,
Yeah.
right? So what are we actually saying? That's one part. And the other part is that often CX and EX are so disconnected that HR is doing something with EX, but they don't really understand why that would be connected to CX. So I thought, hey, we have a bit of a different perspective. Yes, we can also look at EX separately, right? Yes, we also run the drivers of EX. Yes, we check the employee journey. I was sort of reflecting. I don't know what quarter dropped in my head, but I felt, hey, actually everything we're doing is incorporating, enhancing employee experience as part of CX. Hence the, use EX as a design principle of your CX transformation program. That's how this podcast came about.
Yeah. All right. So what's normally the scope of EX?
So I think normally looking from HR, there are two sort of challenges, right? One, often HR is very, let's say, functional. So they're looking at, of course, recruiting. They're looking at learning and development. They're looking at leadership programs. Right? So it's really more, let's say, on the development side of HR, or sometimes also on the legal side. So employee journey mapping is getting there, but also not necessarily normal for each HR organization. Everybody's measuring, of course, employee engagement. But there, I think in 100% of the cases where I reviewed an employee engagement, let's say tool, right? They tend to use survey tooling for that. They're not actually measuring employee engagement. That's one issue. Looking at a scientific definition of engagement. And now I'm not the science purist, but if you're not measuring engagement, then you can never find what's influencing engagement, right? If you're not measuring the actual topic.
And we have a separate podcast about that, right? So if you want to know more about measuring this, just find the podcast and dive into it.
Yeah, I think it's called probably the drivers of employee experience, right?
Yeah.
So where we use the driver technique from the CX side, exactly the same for EX. The only, let's say, good news is that on the EX side, you have already an 80% version of our survey based on my PhD that you can use as a baseline. So I think that's easier because on the CX side, you really need to start from scratch to build your surveys. With EX, it's a bit more generic across organizations. So I think when you look at, let's say, our vision, right, and my sort of purpose in this world is to bring more human centricity, right, more focus on people into organizations. So we use the 3 pillars, right? We focus on customers, employees, and purpose. And also the order of the 3 is a conscious choice. I think I mentioned that maybe also in previous podcasts. But for me, right, purpose can be super vague and abstract. So what I realize is when you start with the customer, so I made this model, right? So you have CX layer and an EX layer. And normally you would start maybe at the same time, but then something clicked for me where I said, no, for me, there's a reason why you start with the customer. Because when you start with the customer, you tend to figure out that the key drivers are on the human side of things, right? Give me personal attention, be there for me, treat me with respect. And that resonates a lot with employees, right? That was the reason once they decided to work for company X, giving them more meaningful work. So that's already slowly getting into employee experience. And experiencing more meaningful work is an easier bridge to purpose. Right? So for me, that's how the 3 are also connected and how you can start from that perspective, weaving in all these 10 elements that we came up with today to really make EX a design principle of any CX transformation program.
Yeah. All right. So let's dive into the 10 tips.
Yes.
Number 1, connect all the dots in CX transformation program.
Yeah, I think that's a generic tip, let's say, for any transformation program, any program that you're running. I think almost all employees feel like, oh, this is like project 385, right? that they're throwing at me. no idea why, no idea how it's connected. So one of the first things that we tend to do is to say, okay, what are all the initiatives that are running? What is the strategy, right? Give me all the information. And then how can we blend this all together into one storyline where employees understand, this new CRM system is helping us to enhance the driver so we can give more personal attention to customers. I'm just making it up, right? But to really make sure that you connect all the dots, for me, that's crucial for employees so they understand why. And also to make sure that CX is not this separate department thing, this separate topic. No, CX should feed everything else, right? It
Yeah.
should feed your digital transformation. It should feed HR. It should be woven into the daily operations, right? Every aspect of the organization should be infused with CX instead of making it a separate thing where employees feel, okay, yes, of course the customer matters, but is this another flavor of the month, right? That management, I don't know, went to a seminar and heard something about CX.
Yeah, exactly. And when you say connect all the dots, can you elaborate a bit more on how can I start doing this?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's difficult when something is so logical for your own brain to process of how I get there, right? So because sometimes I also think CX and EX is just place yourself in the shoes of a customer or an employee, and you have like 80% done. So I think maybe one of the key starting points is just to use common sense, right? There's a lot of hype, a lot of terminology. Just flip it around and just understand, okay, what are we trying to achieve with a new CRM? What are we trying to achieve with a new recruitment journey? Um, what are our KPIs trying to achieve if it's not just the financial side, right? I think once you start, um, let's say, looking at it, what's maybe the key for each initiative? I'm just making it up as I go along right now, right? I'm just sort of reflecting on my own process. Um, is what if you start by each initiative to understand, okay, what's the positive effect of this on the customers and the employees? And then I can almost not imagine that it's super difficult to bring everything together,
Yeah.
because then you're moving away from hypes, from I don't know, AI, blah blah blah, and you're translating it. Okay, but what does AI mean for my daily work as an employee? And how do I make sure that maybe it's not scared for me? Or how do I ensure that the employee feels, hey, this is facilitating you to spend more quality time with customers? Right? I think just, I don't know, maybe add the human sauce to
Yeah.
every initiative that's running. Maybe that's a good starting point.
All right. Thank you. So number two, you discussed it a little bit when we talked about the three pillars. Customer drivers are connected to meaningful work.
Yeah, indeed. As I mentioned in the intro, right? So a lot of measurements in CX are still pretty transactional, right? Like a first time fix or the speed of doing things or the ease of doing things. And that's not necessarily creating a lot of energy, let alone meaningful work, right? Because we're fixing the basics still. Yes, it needs to be easy. Yes, it needs to be fast. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but it's not the differentiator, right? This is what all your competitors, or in government context, all the other, government agencies are also working on, as they should. But the differentiator is often in this human aspect, and then our statistics, right? They beautifully prove that, hey, indeed, personal attention is 5 times more impactful than fixing the ease of the My account, for example. And finding those drivers does two things. It makes the fluffy thing called experience hard steerable. So now we're speaking the language of the organization. Now they can start prioritizing CX on the same level as costs or, a new law that is coming. And it's also, as I mentioned, often resonating with employees who are saying, hey, finally, right, this is what matters to me. But also, hey, finally now I'm sort of allowed to spend time on this more human side of the experience instead of just running production or, maximizing the average handling time. So I think those two elements really add value in, again, enhancing employee experience without maybe explicitly talking about employee experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. All right. Number three, building journey and channel teams.
Yes, I think one of the key, let's say, complaints of a lot of employees when you look at and you analyze employee engagement surveys is cooperation, right? Cooperation across departments. And it's the same complaint from leaders who feel we're super siloed, it's difficult to work together. Now you can redesign the organization, but I always have a bit of a, let's say, contrarian view where I say it doesn't really matter how you draw the lines, right? How you draw the hierarchy. If people are not willing to cooperate, then it doesn't matter which hierarchy you design. They will not cooperate. So I always say, let's forget about redesigning it. Let's start with working with journey teams. Start with, because first it's an experiment. Let's see what's the value in working in a journey team. How can we optimize working in journey teams? Because then you have sort of this natural way of thinking, okay, if we need to enhance the journey of, I don't know, becoming a customer, I need employees from the call center, from the website, from back office, from finance, from digital. So I have this organic way where, again, we're feeling the meaningful impact on customers. That's a plus. But also, hey, we're learning now. Okay, so I'm doing this at the call center, but I had no idea that my colleagues in finance were doing XYZ. So there you also see when we do the journey workshops. So we're not even working in a journey team, right? It's the first journey workshop to explore what does this journey look like. And there already you see so much energy in the workshop, because employees feel, hey, this is what it means to think from a customer perspective. That's super valuable to them. But also, hey, I didn't know, right, that this was how the journey worked, or there are assumptions that they didn't know. So they, at the end, they always feel it's super valuable to just talk to each other from the journey perspective. I think that's a really valuable way to design it. Again, experiment. Don't start drawing complete new structures, but just start working with the journey team.
Yeah, yeah. I can remember one of the journey workshops. It was really nice, right? Someone was saying, well, and then the customer gets this automatic email, and the colleague next to her was saying, that's me. I'm sending this automatic email.
Yes, I'm the Chinese interface. Oh, sorry, I didn't know that.
All right, so the next one, number 4, it's a little bit connected. It's also about the journey. So mirror the employee journey with the customer journey.
Yeah, so often you see that HR, for example, is mapping the employee journey, meaning what does a recruitment journey look like, the onboarding journey, me being an active employee, and maybe my exit journey. But I think what's often overlooked is when you start analyzing the employee journey. Let's say the journey for, I don't know, applying for social benefits. Then you tend to look at what steps do the customers go through, right? I go to a website, I fill in the form, my income is checked, I maybe get a letter whether or not I'm applicable for benefits. I maybe need to go to the location of the municipality, for example. And then sort of it stops, but a super... well, it doesn't necessarily stop. They tend to ask employees, hey, what are some things that you struggle with? But a super valuable addition is, okay, if we've mapped that journey from the customer perspective, let's sort of mirror and analyze the employee journey of the steps that the employees go through to facilitate that journey. And I think there you have some often very new insights. For several reasons. Again, right, what are the steps that the employees go through? I need to, fill in this system 3 times. Not super efficient, super frustrating. Hey, if my colleague is doing that step, what if we move that step to the front, and maybe we can, again, remove inefficiencies that give us more time with the customer. So I think as a standard approach, whenever you analyze a customer journey, always analyze the employee, right? The mirrored employee journey, and I think you'll have a lot of benefits there on the efficiency side, but also on the, let's say, meaningful side, where employees feel, okay, but this step is really taking a lot of time and it's not adding a lot of value, right? So it's, if you remove that, it's a win-win for customers and employees. I hope you're enjoying this podcast episode so far. Just a very, very short, tiny interruption. Because if you want to learn even more about successful CX transformation, then you can now join our Accelerate and Experience Academy, where I'll teach you everything that I've learned in the past 25 years, with, of course, the scientific background, but also very practical applications, examples, tools, and exercises. So if you're curious, just go to academy.zannavandera.com and hope to see you there.
For sure. All right. And next one, number 5. There's a lot of energy in this one. Co-create tiny habits with employees.
Yes, so one of the key sort of common threads in all the behavioral science books that I read is something that's called playfulness, right? To create a lot of energy, a lot of fun. And I think too many programs, whether you're in CX transformation, digital transformation, completely sort of ignore that perspective. So what we do with tiny habits, so we've analyzed, we found drivers, and then we look, okay, how can we translate those drivers into tiny habits, literally, a menu of tiny habits that employees can start implementing. And that's sort of maybe the functional side, right? We create specific habits that you can do. But how we mobilize everybody to get excited is with a lot of energy. It's like an internal campaign. We create a theme, right? We've had angels. I know. Don't start laughing. Don't be annoyed. We've also had warriors, and we've had everyday heroes, right? So it's not about the soft, fluffy theme, but it is about creating a lot of fun and energy where employees feel, hey, this is really cool. We always frame it as in, hey, do you want to make a difference? Do you want to impact the customer even more? So again, we're connecting it to their sense of meaning, connecting it to their daily work, and then they can volunteer to be part of this.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the energy part is often underrated. And then what we tend to do is, so based on the drivers, we make a first draft of the menu. And we try to place ourselves in the shoes of employees. Right? If you're a call center employee, okay, this is roughly your daily journey. If you're an account manager, this is roughly your daily journey. And then we make a draft menu of those 10 tiny habits. But then what we always do is that we plan, let's say, 1 hour with 3 call center agents or with 3 account managers to just shoot at this, right? To shoot at the list and to give feedback. So it's super efficient, right? It's just 1 hour time investment. And it's really valuable. They feel, hey, but it's really relevant for me and my job. And the reason that I switched to doing it this way instead of having workshops and brainstorming, which we did before, is that what you see is that when you start brainstorming, so let's say personal attention was a driver, you ask employees, okay, in your specific part of the journey, how can you enhance personal attention? And then they really struggle. They struggle to make it really tangible. They struggle to make it about them. It's often the website, the app, right? IT needs to do something, but there's a 3-year backlog in IT, so completely energy sucked out of the room. Well, for us, in 100% of the cases where we've enhanced the satisfaction within 3 months, significantly, it was never about IT, right? It was always about the employees doing something different. So I think co-creating on that level, again, not making a huge thing out of it, you draft the design habits, you let them review, and then you have this quick design of the menu that really feels valuable to them.
Yeah, for sure. So you also talked a little bit about my daily work. That's the bridge to number 6, right? Because you want to integrate these tiny habits into my daily work. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I think also here, too often projects are, too large, too complex. They don't really speak the language of the employee who feels, okay, this is just another, the headquarters has created a project and they really don't understand my daily work. And also when it comes to culture, I tend to say culture for me is in the end, what does every employee do in their daily work? How are they treating customers? So for me, and how are they steered also, right? If leadership is steering me super hard on production, then don't be disappointed that I'm not maybe super customer focused, right? Because you're pushing me on something else. So for me, the key here is that you really understand the daily routines, right? So to daily work, you make it even smaller and you analyze when it comes to tiny habits. You want to connect each habit to an existing routine. And a routine could be, I start and end a Zoom call, 10 times a day. I walk maybe to the coffee machine, right? So really think back on what are the routines within my daily work, because ideally You want each habit, well, in Utopia, and we've created some of those as well. A tiny habit should be 0 extra time out of my day, right? It should be an example that we tend to use is, let's say I'm a call center agent, and I get this bleep in my ear whenever there's a new call waiting. And then the tiny habit was, okay, whenever I get this bleep in my ear, I just think for 2 seconds, how can I give this customer more personal attention?
Yeah.
Right? That's 0 time because, I still need to click on something and let the customer come in. But maximum 5 minutes, right? So somewhere in between, you want to create the tiny habits and really connect it to routines and integrate it in my daily work. Otherwise, it feels again like on top of. I'm already super busy.
Yeah.
I'm already working, I don't know, a gazillion hours, even if maybe I'm not, but it feels like that, right? So I feel overloaded. So you really want to make it part of their existing daily work, so it feels really relevant to them, it feels meaningful, and it doesn't feel like additional work, right? A lot of employees say after they've done the tiny habits, hey, it was actually super simple and it was really valuable, and even now I've added like tiny habit XYZ, right? So they start thinking about creating their own tiny habits, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, super cool. So you said leadership. That's the next one, right? Tip number 7, facilitate leadership to ask about CX.
Yeah, indeed. As I mentioned, right, so we never start looking into KPIs when we start a program because there's a timing for everything. So we start with the drivers, we start with tiny habits, and then always in a super organic way, you get the debate about, okay, but hey, if this is what matters to customers and we're only steering on maybe we need to also reassess the KPIs. And I think that's something you can do, but that maybe takes a bit more time. So also here, just make it really simple. And we also create like a menu of tiny habits for leadership. So, right, the focus here is designing, right, having design principles for employee experience. So if you as a team leader or you as a manager, if, I don't know, on a weekly basis, you ask one of your employees, hey, Zanna, when did you feel last week that you were really impacting the customer? So it's such a small thing, but that also enhances my sense as an employee that, well, you care about me, but I'm assuming, right, you're asking me more questions, right? Any leader would do that, right? You connect with your employees. But you're focusing the question on my sense of meaning and the impact that I'm making. And if I'm not a customer-facing employee, then, hey, when did you feel that with your work, I don't know, you engineered maybe a new solution? When did you feel that you really, created something that was impactful for your colleagues maybe, or for a new product? So just sort of refocus also on asking things, small things, but that show employees that you care about their sense of meaning.
Yeah. This one is also connected to the tip number 1, right? Connecting all the dots. So all the meetings that I have with my team or with my manager, always the customer and the experience is there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also maybe, as you mentioned this, something that resonates with me as well is that also keep reminding employees or keep facilitating them to understand the picture, right? So don't just share that integrated picture once, but keep in different formats, keep explaining, hey, that, next week we're launching this new CRM. That's, to facilitate you to have an easier, less time spent, less frustrations. Or maybe that you get like automated tips to connect more with customers. So also keep explaining in small examples. So right, maybe in the beginning it's, I don't know, the 1 hour kickoff. Hey, this is the new Hallelujah storyline. You don't want to spend each meeting 1 hour repeating that story. But always think about small, tiny examples where, if an employee has a question, you always connect back. Hey, remember, you share this question. This is what we're doing with project XYZ to facilitate that as well, right? So just keep being aware of their context, right? They're not in the same weekly meetings as you are talking about strategy and the plans. So bring it back. What does it mean for their daily work?
Yeah, nice. All right, so we have 3 more tips in how to design EX into your CX transformation program. Number 8 is assess what barriers employee experience to deliver CX.
Yeah, so we already mentioned that it's a good approach to mirror always the employee journey when you're doing a customer journey. So that will give you already some insights, which is really valuable, but also it tends to be a one-off. So here the same as asking regularly about, hey, when did you feel you had a big impact on customers? make it you as a team leader, as a manager, as a director. Just make it part of your standard questions and check-ins to just say, hey, looking back, and always ask about specific examples, right? So thinking back last week, thinking back yesterday, what is one thing that we could have done to facilitate you being able to enhance the experience of customers? What barriers can I take away for you?
Yeah.
So also, I think as a leadership, just maybe have sort of this, this top 3 questions in the back of your mind that you never forget, and you always check in, so you regularly get not just feedback, so employees feel, hey, it's really being taken serious, but also that you figure out, okay, what can I do? And you can probably not solve everything, right? You cannot just change the CRM every day. And in my experience, employees also don't expect you to fix everything. They do expect you to take them seriously. And taking them seriously can also be, hey, yeah, we see it's super frustrating, but just for the next, 6 months, we cannot change that, right? So what can we do around it to help you more, or at least acknowledging it is already super helpful for them.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Number 9, measure human-centric culture to facilitate employees.
Yeah, so let's say on a daily basis, weekly basis, you want to check in. But then, right, how can we facilitate you better? What are some meaningful experiences that you had yourself? And then what we also, because in the end, I always say, right, we don't talk about culture, but we're secretly changing the culture. So one of the things that we developed several years ago is what we called, let's say, culture survey or human-centric culture survey to assess on the 3 pillars, right? Customer, employee, and purpose. Okay, where are we? And we tend to do that as a baseline to see, okay, how human-centric are we already? Do employees feel facilitated to focus on customers? Do they feel there's a clear purpose for the organization? But also then every 6 months, you sort of reassess that. And so we find the drivers, again, of that survey. And we saw that the 3 pillars, they were pretty aligned, right? So purpose was the number 1, but they were really close with customers and employees.
Yeah.
On the, let's say, on the engagement, right? The engagement that the employees feel with the organization, their emotional engagement, the scientific definition of engagement. It's called effective commitment. It's like, I feel at home at company X, for example, right? Those are some statements. And then every 6 months, you sort of reassess to see, okay, I'm using tiny habits, I'm using drivers, I'm doing somewhere a quiz so employees understand what really matters to customers, I'm creating a lot of energy. I start talking about the system, I start talking about KPIs. So every 6 months you get the sense of, are we as the program as a whole moving in the right direction? I think that's also a valuable tool to have a bit more, let's say, helicopter view of what are employees experiencing when it comes to, let's say, maybe more the organization system, right? How are all the elements facilitating their daily work?
Yeah. All right. Then number 10, last but not least, integrate CX, EX, and purpose in the recruitment journey.
Yeah, so for me, so so a recruitment journey, and I'm going to also slip in onboarding journey, because one of the super tangible things I think to start with are these 2 journeys, right? So as I mentioned at the beginning, EX and CX tend to be very separated. HR is not necessarily always convinced that they have a link to customers, so we always need to explain how the bridge is in this meaningful work, right? And the purpose of the organization. And then when you look at a recruitment journey, just when you're assessing new employees, well, first of all, are they aligned with our values, right? Are they breathing customer centricity, for example? But also in all the interviews, are the people who are interviewing them also sharing their own sense of purpose, of why they love working for the organization? Are they sharing, recent moments that made an impact on customers? So are they weaving in? Are they not talking about it, but are they showing the person who is being interviewed, hey, this really matters in our organization? And they have like a gazillion easy examples that they're sharing, right? So it's not about this in a slide deck, we have a slide, customers matter to us, and then it stops. No, you're actually showing in each interview based on the questions that they matter, right? That purpose matters, that employees matter. So I think the recruitment journey should also just be, even in the invitation email, are you constantly designing again, hey, are we making it purposeful? Are we adding the customer into that? And the same goes for the onboarding journey, where a lot of the onboarding journeys, it's a really good starting point, where we often work with HR, but also we blend it in with the operations. So also here, right, we're connecting different departments to redesign the onboarding journey. And then I often challenge them by saying, okay, probably your existing onboarding journey looks a bit like, I'm arriving, I'm getting a lot of, like introduction from the CEO. It's a lot of sending, a lot of slide decks. How do we function? Maybe the history. What do all the departments look like? Probably you have some time spending at IT help desk because your laptop is not working. Not the best onboarding journey. So we tend to say, okay, at least start with redesigning on 4 different layers. For example, the introduction rounds. Integrate, I see it behind you, right? You see behind Miranda, if you're watching the video, you see the yellow book Alive at Work. Start integrating the best self exercise in your introduction round that, that goes a bit deeper than just, hey, I'm Zanna, I'm 47, I've done XYZ, and I live with my husband in Huse City. But it's thinking about, hey, when did I really feel like I was my best self, when I was doing what I feel like I was born to do? You get a completely different introduction. Instead of the CEO sharing, let's say the results, ask the CEO to share why they are still proud to work at this organization, right? What's their own sense of purpose? Let the new colleagues solve a customer problem that the company has been struggling with. So just look at the lens, the customer lens, the purpose lens, and apply that to your onboarding and your recruitment journey. And I think you'll find easy tweaks, right? It doesn't mean that it costs a lot of money, it costs a lot of time. No, it's just redesigning the content of what you're already doing instead of making it pretty passive and me consuming a lot of information. You're really activating me. And then still maybe after that first onboarding, maybe in some, video snacks, you want to still explain these are the departments, this is how we work. But just don't do it on day one, right?
Yeah.
Focus on energy and meaningful experience on day one. And then you've captured me for, the coming months.
Nice.
I think that's it.
I think so too. All right. Any last famous words?
Yeah, maybe the last famous word is what I was thinking of when you asked me halfway is, how can you bridge this storyline into one? I think often when it comes to CX and EX, don't overcomplicate things. Right? Just place yourself, you've probably been an employee, you've definitely been a customer. If you look at it and you would recruit your best friend, if you would have your best friend on the phone, how would you treat them? I always tend to joke that 5 years ago already, I wanted to stop sending out any survey because, they're just a hassle. If every company just would treat all the employees and customers as if they would treat, their best friends, done, right? We can stop doing what we're doing. We need to figure out a new exciting adventure. But unfortunately, right, we have an organization system in 99% of the cases that we need to speak their language, right? So it's not that people in the organization are unwilling. It's just, in my experience, from, let's say, 50 employees or more, right, the size of an organization, something happens where you get this system, and then you need to start understanding how to speak the language of the system, to break through it, and to reel back in the humanity.
Yeah, nice. Thank you so much for sharing and taking us down this rabbit hole of EX.
My pleasure.
See you next time.
All right, ciao.